Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make money by leveraging the internet and the latest technologies. I'm your host, B-Check. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary, the OG NFT collector, the airdrop extraordinaire, and the trusted Web3 advisor of artists, brands, and businesses. We have our good friends speaking with us on the show today. We have Carl, Jack, Funky, Kusho, and Jared. Welcome, new content creator with us. Glad to see you with us. And as a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, we're on YouTube as well. That's pretty cool. We started yesterday. It was a pretty fun experiment. And let's get into some of the additional information. Obviously, as always, this show is not financial advice. This modern market is exceptionally risky. We do not know anything for sure. Please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, how are you doing this 24th of October?
GM. You didn't say the day. That is weird. That is a new one. It is Wednesday though, right? No, Tuesday. It's Tuesday. See, I am highly depending on that. I'm doing well. Excited that we are live on YouTube again. Obviously, yesterday was a bit stressful, but I was quite surprised that everything worked out very smoothly. I think we only have one little issue to fix, which is when I'm talking, I'm still hearing myself in my headphones. But we found a solution for that, so that will be fixed by tomorrow, and I'm pretty stoked about that. Didn't expect it to be such a smooth transition.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty good transition. We had planned it for a reasonable amount of time. We'd been doing a bunch of practice. I shared a tweet yesterday kind of explaining how we thought about it. We had obviously talked about it for a while and then been practicing behind the scenes for quite some time. And then in the end, ultimately, you just got to do things. And although we had initially said we should maybe do a practice run on the weekend, we just didn't get around to doing it. And it's like, you just got to do things. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, that's also fine because you can just fix it and adjust. And as you said, there is like minor hiccups in some of the execution. And bearing in mind, there's all kinds of elements going on here. There's like wires everywhere. There's a roadcaster. There's mics. There's different adapters. But the things you just adjust at the pain points as you move because you got to keep moving. Got to keep moving. That's my thought anyway, Legendary.
But you mentioned that we did all of the practicing. Do you remember what you said to me the first time we practiced video internally?
No. What did I say?
You said that I look like a monkey in a cage
Oh,
when
yeah.
I'm on camera.
Yeah.
And I think this was the reason why we kind of went for like the 2-3 weeks process to just internally be on video, so I could get comfortable with that.
Yeah, we basically had to get you out of the cage. We had to get you out of the metaphorical cage that you found yourself in when you were doing the show. It is funny though, like people, I don't know if people appreciate it. And I think everyone on the stage and everyone in the audience will know this because of how much time they spend in spaces. And I can see lots and lots of prominent people who either host spaces or participate in spaces in some way or listen in spaces. And you'll know from your own personal experience how many times people either come onto your show from like completely random locations, completely unprepared to be able to deliver in a appropriate way. But you'll also know that sometimes, because of the flexibility of spaces, you can basically do it from anywhere. So you can be on holiday and keep going with your spaces. You can be on a work trip and keep going. You can be in a hotel. You can be in your home. That's like one of the benefits of being able to do this live audio and it being so easy is that it is so flexible. However, obviously, when you move to video, you do get put in a cage because suddenly, well, I think there are still ways to get around this. It might require even more tech and even more prep, but you definitely feel slightly more in the cage where it's like, right, I've got my whole setup here now. I kind of can't move if I want to get the show done. So that's my reflection on it. Although we're probably going to have to find a fix to that eventually as well, where we're able to do video from different places too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that for me was like the biggest transition, because I was kind of used during the spaces to just have my phone and move around the flat, get things done, just be up, be moving, stand up, change the height of my desk when I'm back at it. And now just sitting still for an hour, it's something that I like typically don't really do. So this is still a bit of a transition, but also because you mentioned the flexibility of spaces and people joining from everywhere. I think it was last week when we had a speak. I don't remember who it was, who said that they were like currently on a ferry and hoping that the audio is fine. I was laughing my ass off so hard on that, because I think it was the most random location someone ever joined our spaces from.
I think it was Riggs. It was just like, yeah, by the way, I'm on a ferry, so hope it's fine. And the thing is, it kind of was fine. There've been people in less abnormal situations where the audio has been way worse. It was actually pretty damn good considering that he was on a ferry, actually. But yeah, as you say, it can be a bit of a strange, uh, a a strange concoction of locations where you're able to do it because of the flexibility. Um, let's get into the show now. We did something yesterday where we talked a lot about price because price was up quite a lot. We want to do a little bit more of the same because price is up again. So we have reason to be optimistic in that respect. And we're going to get into the headlines in just a second. But as always, before we do that, the snapshot is pinned up top. If you find it brings you some value today, please do give it a like. And let's get into it, starting with the price action. We have crypto, Bitcoin up 11% at almost 34,000 United States dollars. We have ETH up 8% at 1.8K. We have Solana up 3% at 31.1. We have Ape at $1.2 up 8% also. NFT volume was up at 11.7 million, Blur at 8.2, OpenSea at 2.5. In terms of the headlines, we have Bitcoin going up another 10%. And a nice piece of information to accompany that, Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy BTC investment is now $790 million unrealized profit, which is very nice for him and MicroStrategy. Number two, Red Bull Velocity Passes fly on Jack Butcher artist announcement. They've really been picking some fantastic artists to work with, producing some quality art. So that's exciting. And finally, some sadder news. OG CryptoArt platform Async Art announces shutdown. We're going to get into some of those details in a moment because I think part of the reasons were quite significant. Getting into the floor prices, we have CryptoPunks at 47 ETH, Bored Apes at 26.3, Mutants at 5.1, all flat. DGOD's down 5%, a bit of a correction from yesterday, down at 3.3. Captain's down 1% at 4.2. Azuki's down 3% at 5.2. Penguin's down 5% at 5. Moonbird's 1.8. Nouns 36. So a bit of a correction there in the NFT market after the big rises and a couple of big NFT sales in the past 24 hours. And Azuki Spirit selling for 115 ETH. That's $206,000. And a CryptoPunk Wild Hair selling for 55 ETH. That is $99,000. That's the price action. Those are your headlines. We're obviously going to get into all of the details in a moment. But Legendary, just first up, any numbers that you like there?
I think I have to give you the same answer as yesterday. It's a green day. We like all the numbers. If anything were to stand out to me, however, it would be the Azuki Spirit sale. Always love to see them. We talked about the Spirit DAO and the structure and the influence yesterday. So definitely nice to see a sale going on for Azuki Spirits.
For sure. My memory though for Azuki Spirits is that they used to go for much higher than 115, right? Is that fair from your memory?
I think so, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I think they used to be up in the 150 region. But let's get into the news then. Again, we're probably going to start with price action today, with Bitcoin being up 10%. And just a clue for the audience, something which we've noticed, which I've heard other show hosts notice as well, is that when number goes up in the shows, price goes up too. Yesterday, we had 120 live with us in the show. Suddenly, Bitcoin goes up 10%. Legendary, what's the connection?
I wish there were a connection, because then on the day we had the Azuki Elementals reveal, we had D Good Season 3, where we had like 5, 6, 8, 900 people, we should have seen double digits up for BTC, but unfortunately that was not the case. But if we manifest it, it could be a thing for real.
Yeah, that's true. But the thing is, there is something about, like, we've been talking about it for the last few weeks. There is an energy coming back into the space. I think there's been particular mints, there's certain action on coins. There's also just been a bit of an uptick in engagement, I think. Or certainly that's what I'm noticing anyway. I'd be interested to know if other people are feeling that as well. And in terms of the show, after we were rising quite quickly, we kind of had a correction. Sometimes I think of our own growth as a coin chart. We were like up only, then we had a bit of a correction, and we're kind of trending up again. And I think that's just interesting to observe. And I personally think there is a bit of a connection between broader engagement and what else is going on in the market. But let's get into the market then. Bitcoin is up another 10%, legendary. The first piece of news was that Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy is back in profit on its $4.6 billion investment. So a huge, huge holding. The average purchase price was $29,000. The current Bitcoin price is $34,600. So it's $5,000 profit per Bitcoin. They currently hold 158,000 Bitcoin, and they're currently in total profit by approximately $790 million. I guess the question here, Legendary, is like, how significant is this? Is this Michael Saylor, and how much would it have taken when everyone was giving him the medicine of criticism in all of that time when he was underwater, and being able to hold his nerve all that time?
I think Michael Saylor obviously is playing with MicroStrategy the long game, and we are just in market phases when MicroStrategy is at a loss with BTC. Everyone's like, the average price was this and that. Haha, look at them, they're $1 billion down. Once BTC is up, everyone's like, look at him, he's such a genius. Now he is 793 mil in profit.
Yeah.
It's just a nice way to kind of engagement farm when that sentiment changes into post numbers on MicroStrategy and how their BTC performance is doing overall.
Yeah, I agree. It's just because the numbers are so big, it's just a fun statistic to always throw out, I guess. Funky, your hand is raised. What's your thought on Bitcoin's additional 10% rise? Any thoughts on the cause for that? And anything on Michael Saylor as well? Then Jack, I see you with your hand raised. I'd love to get you in as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, B-Check. GM, everybody. You guys look spectacular this morning. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so, everybody who's listening. But I want to say real quick, I'm a big fan of MicroStrategy, big fan of Michael Saylor. Believe it or not, our biggest holding in our crypto portfolio is Bitcoin. So I'm kind of a diehard Bitcoiner. And in the summer of 2020, or maybe it was early fall, I think it was around October, he announced that he was going to start doing this. And I remember thinking, I'm buying MicroStrategy. And I went on and I put in my Roth IRA and bought some MSTR, NFA, and all that stuff. It ran to like 1,200 bucks. I bought it for like 120. It was like a 10x in equities. It was crazy. I think he's a genius. I think that he is really smart. He knows where this is all going. And just the whispers of the BlackRock and the ETF and everything else probably caused a lot of this market pump. And I feel like people are going to look back. All the people who are haters of Michael Saylor are going to look back and see he's a genius and he was just ahead of the curve. That's my take.
Do you know? So thanks for that, Funky. Do you know the history of why he got into Bitcoin?
I haven't read his book, but I know he was very big on, like, MicroStrategy is a legacy tech company. It's been around and it's made several pivots in its past. And a lot of people thought like this is just him trying to save his company. It looks like a smart bet now. But he wrote a book many years ago, probably around the turn of the century, where he was kind of talking about being ahead of technological trends and how that is going to create value and everything else. And so, he was early into some of the giants like Apple, Google, recognizing that they were going to be game changers. And I think from a technologist perspective, that's really where Saylor's coming from. And just, I mean, I'm not sure about the whole, bury your private keys with and no one ever gets it, and
Yeah.
like all some of the crazier takes he's had. But I think just being ahead of the curve and recognizing, being a technologist, I think he just recognized the promise when we compare that to the current expansionary fiat system that we have and so on and so forth. I think that really informed a lot of it.
Yeah, I think there was one point in time where his advice might have been to like sell your house to buy Bitcoin, for example. And I wouldn't necessarily subscribe to that or think that that was genius advice in any way. However, going back to the history, I just remember, and people would need to clarify this and double check, but I'd recommend going back to an interview that he did with Kobe and Ledger on Up Only, probably in 2021, like during the bull. And he kind of explained why he got into Bitcoin. And I, at that point, wasn't that much of a Bitcoin bull. Like, I'd kind of been converted to ETH, really liked the ETH thesis, thought there's so much economic activity here. I really liked it. But he explained it in a really interesting way. And actually, it was a predominantly legal thing, actually, where Bitcoin, it could be considered property in a way that ETH wasn't. And so for his company, it was easier to hold. But actually, even before that, and again, you need to check this, but I remember him saying something about having operations in Latin America and just getting stuck with money and just not being able to move the money. And this kind of feeds into the point that we made yesterday, where the thesis for some of these cryptocurrencies sometimes gets lost on people in better or operating in better conditions because they're not routinely subject to very troubling either governmental scenarios or central bank scenarios. Like, look, we're going through our own crisis, I think, in some respect, even in the Western world, but there are other places where you can really get stuck. And I think he saw it as a vehicle to just be able to own stuff properly in some of these more challenging locations. So that was one of the thoughts, but I would recommend just checking everything I just said and listening in for yourself. It was a really interesting podcast where he basically didn't let the hosts ask any questions. He just spoke at them for a long period of time, which is quite funny. Jack, want to bring you in here. What's your thought on the MicroStrategy news, but also Bitcoin's move up in the last few days / 24 hours? And then Legendary want to check in with you again.
Yeah, I really like that you sort of pointed to me after just talking about these guys who just won't let the hosts come in and just speak on monologues for time and time. Look, I just wanted to quickly point out that if you don't know who Sailor is, one of the best videos to watch is him talking about the iPhone like before anyone knew how big it was going to be, outside of maybe Steve Jobs and Apple.
Yeah.
Because there's this content that goes around where most people, their investment thesis on the iPhone was, look, this is the market cap for phones, like generally across the world. You know, look at BlackBerry, look at all the sales for phones. This is how much people are going to spend on phones. And Saylor just debunks it. Like he looks into the future. He talks about how it's going to have an app store, how, you know, music, and how it's way more than just a phone. And if you look at the market cap of all of those things combined, he really does see the future in some of these tech things. And he's not always right, and I wouldn't say he doesn't miss, but the rate of misses is, you know, he's definitely an NBA star. I don't know why I went NBA on that one as a UK person, but there you go. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah, fair enough. If you haven't seen that video on the iPhone, yeah, I've seen it. It's pretty fun to watch. So I would definitely recommend that as well. Thanks so much for that, Jack. Legendary, checking in with you here before we get into some of the meme coins, which I think are relevant as part of this story as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like on Michael Saylor, I think it's always fascinating when you have people who are visionaries and who can, you know, see a future where just a new tech appears and changes the world. When you remember the typical example of, you know, computers in the 50s and the 60s, and I think it was the IBM boss back then saying there's not a need for more than 2K computers in the entire world. Similar story with cars, where the line kind of went, okay, every car needs a driver. We need to have skilled drivers to drive cars. It's never going to be a mass product because there's just not the demand for that. And it's always cool to see people who, you know, have a vision and can see the world changing. And in terms of the reasons for the recent BTC pump, before we get into the meme coin section, I think there were two things that kind of stood out. connected to BlackRock. One of which was that Scott Johnson did observe that on X, who is a finance lawyer, that BlackRock actually obtained a CUSIP number, which is that identifier number in North America for financial products on the one hand, and that they also announced that they plan to seed the BTC spot ETF in October, which definitely seemed to get people excited about a probably imminent launch.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just pulled that up here. The exact tweet was, yeah, so Scott Johnson, who initially reported, but I believe it's the senior ETF the senior ETF analyst for Bloomberg, came on top of it and said, BlackRock stating in their recent spot BTF ETF amendment that they are seeding the ETF in October. Don't want to read that much into it, but it is new info, not in the original filing, so noteworthy. Great catch by Scott. So, yeah, as you said, we touched on it yesterday. The pent up demand for Bitcoin when we thought it was going to get approved seemed to be quite significant. Maybe that's what it is, kind of spilling through now as things seem to be moving in the right direction.
Maybe one last word on caution on that, though. When an ETF gets seeded, that's typically not done with a lot of capital. So the expectation shouldn't now be that BlackRock's going to go out and market buy millions and millions worth of BTC just to seed the ETF. That's unfortunately not how it works. That
is definitely what everyone was thinking. That is definitely, like, that is 100% what 90% of people were thinking on crypto Twitter, surely. I mean, just to check in, like, I mean, I don't actually know the process. Do you know how exactly it does happen if they don't just go out and market buy it all?
First of all, I would assume they already have BTC, so they don't have a massive demand to market buy now.
Sure.
Second of all, you would also like typically partner up with someone to do that and do OTC deals. But I remember when we seeded, when I was working in finance, our own fund, that was a very small amount to start off with before it went public in retail. So it was just a couple million euro back then.
I see. Well, super interesting. I think that is good clarification, but also good to keep on top of. Moving into the meme coin stuff, which seems to be significant because when those start to pop, sometimes the other stuff starts to move alongside it. This was a funny, well, it's not a funny tweet. It was a prophetic tweet by DFarmer. He tweeted 12 hours ago, now one of these shitcoins will pull a 50% vertical in a 24-hour candle when things settle. Then everything will go real stupid. And within a few hours, basically, he said the prophecy has been fulfilled fast. The fact that Bitcoin, not the real Bitcoin, but the other coin with the ticker Bitcoin, did that so poetically. The rest of the things will move up. So of course, Bitcoin with the ticker Bitcoin is that coin which is Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic 10 Inu, which I didn't actually remember until I saw it in full. So that did a 50% in the last 24 hours. And I, just before the show Legendary, we were talking and I showed you it and you were like, what? It literally did 50% in the last 24 hours. Which just shows, I'm not entirely sure what it shows, but there's just demand for things to move. It feels like people are ready for things to move. And someone like DFarmer, for the people who don't know, he's a very prominent trader. I'm not saying that everything that he says happens all the time, obviously not. And you have to be careful when following trades, particularly on Twitter. But it was just interesting to see that happened. Any other thoughts on that particular move?
I think we like a world where Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic 10 Eno is at 135 mil market cap, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's better than a world without that. So I'm very happy with it. And then I kind of wanted to tie it in to the Pepe news, which is interesting, which people might have missed. But basically 6.9 trillion of Pepe tokens, which is worth approximately $6 million, have been burned. It says, and it's kind of new information. I don't know all of the details here, just reporting what it said out of the main account. Said a new team of advisors have been brought on to guide Pepe forward. Uses for the remaining 3.79 trillion tokens attributed to the original team, Multisig, for strategic partnerships and marketing opportunities are currently being explored. Legendary, why do you think this burn has happened now? Why do you think they're exploring these partnership and marketing opportunities now?
I mean, I think it's a perfect timing to go for it right now. You have interest that goes back up in the market. People are suddenly getting excited about cryptocurrencies again. So if you're a meme coin and you want to take yourself a bit more seriously and talk about strategic partnerships and want to pick the perfect time to do that, it would be right now when the market seems to get heated up again and people are like, yesterday we had a discussion on looking at all-time highs and looking at the price of Solana and seeing, oh, it's at $30, but all-time was like $250. That could be another 8x that it does just to get back there. And now you look at Pepe and you're like, oh, the market's heating up. Pepe was at whatever the number was, and now they announce strategic partnerships. Why wouldn't now be the perfect time to buy in again? So I think it's just a good timing if you want to come out with an announcement like that, no matter if you have strategic partnerships to back that or not, which I simply don't know and don't claim to know. But I'd be happy because I never sold my Pepe bag, so let's see.
Yeah, indeed. Raheem, welcome to the stage. Great friend of the show, I believe. Do you have something to add on the Pepe in particular?
Hey guys, can you hear me? This is the first time I'm using it through the desktop.
Oh, sounds pretty nice, Raheem. Sounds good.
Perfect. Fantastic. For some reason, I don't know if I'm just being a boomer, but I can't find the raise your hand thing on the desktop.
You can't do it on desktop, mate.
Okay, fair. Cool. I wanted to talk about like the Pepe thing because me and a couple of people were talking about that it's almost like they did something very smart, borderline thing that could be regarded as like not the most ethical thing to do, but at the same time they didn't do really something unethical. But essentially the tokens that they burned yesterday, which is 6.9 trillion tokens, they are the tokens that were transferred 59 days ago from their multisig wallet to Binance, and from Binance they ended up burning it, which is essentially, and me and a couple of friends, we were just like discussing it, that if you were to like really play this, essentially this could be regarded as like a pretty intensely smart marketing play, because the moment they moved that around 6 to like 9 million tokens, you had a lot of people fighting because they thought that the only reason you would put it on an exchange is to liquidate, so the price tanked a lot, and that would be a good point for people to buy it from stable. So even if Pepe team or people around have essentially stables, that is a great time for you to buy it. However, they didn't really dump on the market, they didn't really like sell it, so it's almost like if this was all intentional, they doubled on the idea that the market will speculate on them selling, because they took such a long time and they found the perfect catalyst to be like, you know what, tonight is the night we're going to like randomly burn 6.9 trillion tokens, which I just thought was an absolute masterclass when it comes to like a marketing in some way.
Yeah, that's so funny. That's really interesting context. So I guess two takeaways from there. One is that kind of pre-action, which had happened quite some time ago, where they'd sent all of these tokens to an exchange when people would have thought that was for selling, and then they didn't. And then the second thing, which is now noticing a moment in time where there seems to be a bit of hype, a bit of excitement in the coin market, and then deciding to pull this stunt. Is that a fair assessment of what you just said, Raheem?
Yeah, absolutely. Perfectly said.
I think we're kind of living in a parallel universe. So yesterday we started video on YouTube. This is when the show changed to talk about market numbers going up. Today we're on YouTube again. Now we're talking about meme coins and Pepe. And now I have the final confirmation that I got switched to an alternate universe, because we have art news coming up where I expected Raheem to, join us on the velocity pass, to join us on the unfortunate shutdown of acing art. But actually, Raheem comes in with a banger take on Pepe. I don't know what is going on, but this is not the modern market that I was used to when it was audio only, but I absolutely love it.
That's so funny because like everyone in Dubai in our like art style group knows, like I was the first person to mention Pepe when it was like initially out in April, and like I'm not much of a meme coin kind of person and stuff, so I didn't even ask around because I just didn't want to come off as foolish, because I was like, I don't want someone to be like, oh, Rahim, this is a stupid investment because there are like 4 Pepe coins and stuff. And then of course everyone realized that like I messaged about it like around like 2 million market cap, so everyone knows like I'm huge into Pepe.
That's so funny. As we said, like we've started the show and things have gone a little bit upside down. I think we've marked the start of the bull, Legendary. Literally, the video version of the show has marked the start of the bull, and it's awoken the Pepe inside of Raheem. So we that's a very exciting moment for all involved. Any final thoughts, Legendary, on the Pepe stuff? Otherwise, I think we can go on to let's go on to the next headline.
Happy to move on to the next headline.
Okay. Well, I guess the final point is that Pepe is up 30% for the people who weren't 100% sure what was going on the back of that news. So, Harry Potter coin up 50%, Pepe up 30%. Things are moving. Bitcoin up 10%. Hope you didn't miss out on this move, ideally. Okay, let's get into the next headline. We have Jack Butcher being announced as the next artist in the Velocity Pass mint. Didn't have a huge bump up in price necessarily from where it was 24 hours ago. I think 7 days ago, the price was around 1.45 ETH. It's just a touch beneath that now. Remember, the artist that they had just announced prior to Jack Butcher was Snowthrow, who is also an unbelievable artist, one of the top, if not the top, people that they could have possibly collaborated with. And I think it's just another indication of Red Bull partnering with really quality people and an example of people doing things in the right way. Legendary, I guess I had 2 questions for you. One is on collaborations and to what extent artists are, because I saw some of this commentary on Twitter that some artists might be diluting their art, diluting their brand if they do too many kind of corporate partnerships. And I wondered if you had a view on that. Raheem, I'd be interested to hear your view on that as well, and also anyone else who's listening in. And then the second question is, how many artists do you think are out there at the moment that have a material excitement and impact with these type of announcements at the moment? I think the price did go up a little bit yesterday, and I'm not saying all these things should be optimized for that, but is there actually anyone out there that can really generate significant, fast excitement? Maybe the first question first.
Even if the price didn't go up, we saw massive volume compared to the other days yesterday, though.
It's true.
On the collaboration question, do too many collaborations, especially with corporate entities, can end up being detrimental for your reputation as an artist and for the body of work that you created? It's a difficult one. I think the first thing that comes to mind is obviously kind of depends on the partnership that you're going for. Like partnering up with, in this case, Red Bull and Bybit, who both are working on the Velocity Pass series. You could argue it's one of the biggest brands in the world and certainly one of the most valuable brands. On the other hand, you would say that an artist doesn't necessarily have to associate themselves with like a retail consumer grade brand. But I don't necessarily see this as an issue as long like, the art is in the foreground of that, and you kind of just leverage the reach that Red Bull Racing together with Bybit offer and allow you to address ultimately a new segment of collectors or just potentially people who are interested in your art and just like seeing that. And in the long run, it kind of going back to Nifty Gateway and Trevor Jones back then having that collab with Park. I know that's not a corporate entity, but that just came to mind. I remember how excited everyone was in the market about that particular collab. Trevor Jones, Park coming together, two amazing artists who had all the attention share back then. And in the long run, I just think that the original works of both Park and Trevor Jones did better when it comes to price and stability than
Yeah.
the collaboration. So I just think in the short term, it might help, whether that's a collaboration with another artist or a collaboration with artists via the proxy of this corporate structure with Red Bull and Bybit might help you drive interest. But I think in the long run, the value will accumulate around your original work as an artist, and not necessarily around the collabs that you did with other people or entities.
I agree with that on a. I think I almost certainly agree with that, Raheem. I'd love to hear your thoughts in a second. I agree with that. I guess I have a follow-up question first, which is, do you think that the reason why the collaboration work doesn't quite get the same love and attention as the original work after time is because sometimes in this universe, there's a bit of a discoverability issue where if your collab piece is on a different contract and it might be under the Velocity Pass or it might be under some other heading in OpenSea, and we've already said about OpenSea, you search in OpenSea and you still can't get to the NFT. Sometimes you have to search in Google and you go to OpenSea and that's how you get to it because there's a bunch of scam links as well. And because it's not housed within your original body of work where that's where the attention is, maybe some of that value kind of gets lost because the attention gets lost. Do you think that's the case, or do you think it's more that, you know, it's just simply not as valuable as the kind of pure original pieces?
I think there's two reasons to it. One is exactly what you said, the discoverability of it. And the second, I think it's just super difficult to find a way to value a collaboration in terms of, look at the work of Xcopy, look at the price that the one of ones by Xcopy trade for. Of course, you have more popular ones, but you have like a commonly established floor. And if one were to sell under that, everyone would be like, oh, this is super cheap for one of one by Xcopy. And if you now have a collab, going back to Trevor Jones and Park, where you also like kind of back then had floor prices for one of one works by both of the artists, and then you have a collab, what is the floor? It can't be like, you know, Trevor Jones floor plus Park floor for one of one divided by two. That's not really how it works. It's just difficult to put a number on it, I feel.
Yeah, I think that's a valid take. Raheem, as someone who's kind of very involved in the art side of stuff, what's your thought on that question?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with the bit that you guys said. I just think there's like an element of price discoverability. I also think one of the things that happens, and again, and I feel like the only way to rectify or have proper insightful information on this would be just to have like a large data set. But I think more often than not, when you have a collaborative piece between two people, even though we are like, oh, you guys are artists, so you guys are creating like an art piece together, but I don't necessarily think that all artists are part of like the same category. Whether it's like, let's say like tomorrow Beeple does a collab with like Xcopy, I would be interested to see like what happens with that, because there are a lot of people who are Xcopy collectors who are not into Beeple's art, and vice versa. And a lot of times we always see, for example, you know, when we had the Jack Butcher and Pudgy Penguins thing, and everyone's like, okay, this is going to be big. But what are we basing this on? Are the Pudgy Penguin holders art collectors? Are the art collectors into Pudgy Penguins? Like, we don't know. We just don't have enough data. And I think with like collabs also, we have a few collabs with like certain big artists, but I just think that because we haven't had like a large data set of like certain top of the top people doing, let's say if Snowfro does something with Xcopy, how would that, like, what is the price discoverability of that, or something with Beeple or some of the top cream, and see how that happens. I guess like I agree with the two of you. I just think you need time and I guess data to kind of like really have a strong opinion on this.
Yeah, I love it. I love the idea that, yeah, you're right. We haven't necessarily experimented with it that much, and therefore you have all of the scope to see how those things play out. I wonder if it's one of those scenarios where when you completely own something 100% and it's your production in its entirety, you take full responsibility and full ownership for it. As soon as you co-create with someone, it becomes 50-50. And then, I mean, maybe this is kind of like a capitalism versus a more social kind of outlook, where it's like, when it does become 50-50, are you as incentivized to make sure that that piece is as well pushed out and as looked after, or those collectors are as well looked after, when you know you're sharing that collector base with someone else. And then potentially, this is just me spitballing, I don't know if this is correct, I'm talking off the top of my head, maybe you can start to see how you would start to question, like, well, okay, well, I'm doing this amount for these collectors, or I'm doing this amount. Are you doing the same as me? Are you doing this the same amount, a different amount? And I think that type of thing can creep in as soon as you enter a type of partnership. Whereas 100% when you are an artist or a creator of some sort, and you have your core audience and your core collectors, you just know there's no question about who's responsible there. So that's just one of the thoughts I had. Legendary, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said. Then if you do a collab with one or multiple artists who market it, do both market it? Do you end up in a situation where artist A relies on artist B to do the marketing and vice versa? That's a very fair addition.
Makes sense. Interesting discussion. I thought that would be helpful, considering these types of drops, which are doing pretty well. They're doing very, very well. It's obviously working for both parties. I just thought it'd be helpful to have that conversation. But what we want to do now is get into the Web3 roundup, and a roundup of the creator news to get you up to speed with what's happening in the previous 24 hours outside of the headlines. And then we're going to get into the final headline, which is an interesting one. So stay tuned for that. Let's do it. Getting into the Web3 news, as always, pinned up top in the snapshot. It's the third and fourth section. Number one, Artifact announces Air Force One fusing all 10 DNAs of unique Air Force Ones limited to 40 pairs. This is pretty cool. Where there's only 40 pairs of them. These digital and physical collectibles have been gifted to the legends who redeemed each of the 10 original colorways in the April 2023 forging event. So that's a nice reward for the people who had invested more into that ecosystem. Number two, as we mentioned already, 6.9 trillion of Pepe tokens, $6 million worth, have been burned, and a new team of advisors have been brought on. Number three, BlackRock prepares for BTC ETF launch and lines up seed investors. Number four, Pixel Vault announces all founders DAO and generative identity holders can test Battle Plan. I've been hearing from some reputable sources that this game is looking pretty good. Getting into the creator corner, number one, Sam Spratt and Nifty Gateway open source the code for the Monument game. This is a really interesting thing. Sam said on this, I'm thoroughly unconcerned about copies of the Monument game. I just knew if we were going to spend a year making all of this, I would want to see not only what unfolds within the game and my world, but what others could do building on top of it. It's pretty nice of him. Number two, Hideki Tsukamoto sells out 7 pieces from Immortal on Maker's Place for more than $30,000, showing that art is still doing exceptionally well. And finally, for the creators out there, always want to provide these opportunities and get people knowledgeable about them. Base announces base grants of 1 to 5 ETH. They say that what we will consider when looking to give out a builder grant is, number one, is the builder creating something unique and fun? And two, is the builder bringing more users on chain? So that was the Web3 roundup. That was the creator corner. Legendary. Let's get into the final headline for today, which is to do with async art. I will do that. So what's happened with async art? For the people who don't know, async art is an OG NFT crypto platform. Legendary's got an awesome story to tell on it. So luckily we have time for that. We're going to let him tell that in a second. But just for the context, it's been around since February 2020. And it's been very well known, really well praised, really well liked by lots of, I say traditional, but like the collectors in this space who have been around for a longer period of time, very well liked and respected. But they've had to shut down. They said, the founder said that we have to go where you're celebrated, not tolerated. It's been a tough decision, but the async team and I have made the hard decision to wind down operations. They said that the NFT world was smaller and simpler back in February 2020 when they started. Everyone knew each other and there was a genuine sense of altruism all around. I was eager to join and contribute. And with a community that shared my values of innovation, collaboration, and equity. However, the next 3.5 years was a roller coaster ride as NFTs exploded. As we all know, as a futurist and cyberpunk who eschewed physical possessions, I was thrilled to see digital art and collectibles catch fire. However, the ride didn't come without its challenges, and we began encountering some less glamorous aspects of this world as motivations of the industry changed. He goes on, but I think I'm going to stop there because I think that's enough for the points I wanted to make. But Legendary, I wanted to throw to you. You've got some really interesting context on this story on async as a platform. Then I wanted to kind of talk about how some of these, or why some of these platforms might not be able to survive in this type of market.
Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of sad to read the news that the platform is shutting down. It's a side of mine that a lot of people don't know, but when I got into the space, into the NFT space, in particular in 2019, I also started by doing art and exploring a makerspace, exploring other platforms, and that kind of culminated into me joining Async Art and doing the Cyberwatch drop back then, which was a collaboration with many artists, including Coldy, Matt Kane. And back then was a super popular piece that we actually managed to sell for 88 ETH. And the fun thing about it was, which back then was the signature feature of async art, the interactivity, that you would sell the piece layer by layer. So every artist created one layer of that piece, in our case, which paid homage to the Nightwatch painting by Rembrandt. And so you could collect the master layer, but you could collect the individual layers as well. And if you owned an individual layer, you could decide how that looks like in the master layer by changing the look of a specific character. And that was pretty fun because with 33 different layers plus master layer to own, you had billions and billions of combinations how that artwork could look like, and a lot of work went into that. So obviously it was quite nostalgic to read the news that the platform's now shutting down.
Yeah, that's a pretty awesome story. I think a lot of people definitely don't know about your kind of artistic history and how you were involved with that type of stuff beforehand. So that's cool to hear. Thinking about there are a few things that stood out to me about some of the tone of this announcement, which stood out to me. And I think, I mean, this might not be very very enjoyable for people. It might not be particularly well liked, but I'm just going to say what I think about just certain aspects of the tone and see what you think. So I'm talking off the top of my head, so I'm just going to tell you what my honest thoughts are. I obviously, first and foremost, would comment that it's clearly a difficult market. It's not the first team that have said that they've needed to wind down their operations, and it's a sad situation where when a platform which is really cool, which is really well liked, has to do this because of the various market conditions. But there are a couple of points in time in this kind of long statement where I started to question in what conditions people think that they can be successful in this very, very challenging space. Now, this is a challenging space anyway. And of course, things are easier in a bull market. Like, I think a lot of people made a lot of money in the bull market when certain things were maybe not as good as they could be. And equally, in a bad market, there can be genuinely good things which don't survive and simply fail because the market's just not ready there to kind of to help you. But I have noticed this idea, not just in this particular statement, but amongst other people, sometimes in the art world, where they kind of talk about how it was so good before. Like, it was so good before. Everyone was so altruistic before. Everyone wasn't here for the money. Like, everyone was just doing amazing things, and everyone was so kind and so nice, and no one cared about money. And then all the money happened, and then things changed, and then everything became so difficult. And now we can't survive when it's just not like it used to be. And I guess my question or my thought on that whole idea is markets always evolve and change, and things sometimes improve for you on your way. Sometimes they go bad for you. I would struggle to think that an increase in liquidity would be bad. And I just wonder whether sometimes people get too caught up in thinking on the past and how things were so good, and not thinking appropriately for the present, which is, look, there are more traders now, or there is actually more liquidity now, but there might not be the same type of people as before. And we've obviously got more competition now. I suspect starting in February of 2020, that's a whole year before I was even into the space, I think. And there would have been multiple platforms that have propped up since then, right? To kind of, because they saw the opportunity, and therefore the competition goes up. So really, you have to figure out ways to deal with the world as it is rather than how you'd like it to be. And I've just noticed that on a couple of occasions, people talking about the way that the situation is in a kind of derogatory way, as if it's the situation that has ruined everything. And look, I completely accept that the market is not good. I do take that point. It is not a market full of roses right now. But I think when you say things like we began encountering some less glamorous aspects of this world as motivations of the industry changed, I just think one of the things about the universe is that things do change. Like, things will always change, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. And you kind of have to consider that and adapt to that as time goes on, and not put the past on a pedestal, because I think we all do that sometimes. But I think it's our job, and I just wrote a tweet on this. I said, I've noticed a trend where people blame how the space has developed for why they've failed. Too much capitalism, too much speculation, a departure from culture. But my point is that the world evolves. It will not keep things the way that you want. And it's our jobs to figure out how to operate in it. That's my kind of fairly strong take. I'm still very appreciative of the people who, might fail, even if they do try to do that, right? Because there will be that proportion of people, because things aren't necessarily easy. But that's my thought, Legendary. Would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I remember the day when async art launched.
Wait, wrong microphone that I unmuted. Still getting used to all the technicalities. Sorry for that.
I can still hear
yeah,
you.
I remember the day when async art launched, and I remember the sentiment that was in the market back then, which was, very chilled, very laid back. There was a time when Xcopy did his thing and nobody really cared to the same extent that it did today. The work was collected very, very cheaply. But the thing is, we live in an attention economy, and that does not only mean that we're competing for attention. It also means once there is attention, there will also be money tied to that, and there will be an industry. And the reality is, if you're in a market that's so new that you can't even call it a market or an industry, most of the participants rather do it as a hobby. I wasn't, full-time into Web3. I was exploring, experimenting, and so were many other people. But once the market changed and industry started to be built around that, artists could make a living from that, obviously it becomes a market, and obviously it becomes capitalistic. Like, the traditional art market is also a very, money heavy industry to be in. And you can like that or you can hate that. But I just see the notion that's not only in this space, but generally in society, that we just love to blame capitalism for everything. It just, randomly this morning, and I'm going to finish my monologue, saw a person on Reddit posting they broke the MacBook screen by dropping the MacBook. And everyone in the comments was like, yeah, just go to the Apple store and tell them, it suddenly stopped working. Don't tell them that you dropped it, because they're a $1 trillion company. They can afford to change your screen for free. It won't hurt them. And it's just, this notion is, I find it kind of ridiculous. I'm not saying you should not or should do that, but just blaming capitalism, just saying, just because someone has money, it's okay to, take away from them, or to blame it if you don't like the results of it, is often easy to say, but I don't feel it's like always perfectly accurate. And yes, the market changed, and yes, we cannot like it, and you can be the opinion it was better before it was a massive industry. But ultimately, the question is, do you want to adapt to that to continue doing your business, which is okay to say? Or do you say you just don't like the circumstances anymore, and for those reasons, you're out and you want to do something else, which is also a perfectly fine stance to have?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's a tendency in this space to be the strongest socialist capitalists. that exist. Like people are simultaneously hyper communalized and want to talk about community all the time, and yet with the other hand, try to take as much as they can as possible. And I think there's a lot of and this is kind of moving away from async art. This is not about them. I think there's a lot of people who want to say a bunch of stuff about community and the more social aspect of stuff, whilst being hyper capitalistic themselves, and whilst also slagging off capitalism all the time. And again, that's not a comment that either of those things are perfect by any means, but I think you do need to have some respect for the capital, and also respect that the market changes. And I think that was the point in relation to async art. The market will change, and got to try to evolve. But if you were involved in that, I appreciate it's a kind of a sad situation, because it was a great, kind of a really cool, well-intentioned institution that everyone really did like. So hopefully that was another interesting discussion. I thought we had 3 full interesting discussions there, which is always the intention. Guys, we have run out of time for today's show, though. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, thank you, Legendary, for co-hosting. Thank you to the rest of the speakers, and thank you to everyone in the audience. We're 100+ again live. Really loving the engagement at the moment. Have a wonderful day. We will see you again tomorrow, back same time, same place, 7 a.m. Eastern time. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.